If you started off January 1, making a complete 180, changing your life, doing all of these different things in the name of a resolution, and maybe you got to January 31st and made it to the part, but never got to the solution, then this is the episode for you. My name is Chef Boy RDN. This is the Chef Boy RDN podcast. Welcome back. I appreciate you for coming back. Thank you for checking out last week's episode. And if you didn't check it out, this is your opportunity. Definitely pause this one. Go back and check out the last one. We are talking about what's the purpose of this podcast, why I decided to create this space. It is my goal that everybody who's connected to this podcast, from a health standpoint, prospers. We want everybody to be in good health. This podcast is definitely for the culture. As a child of the culture, I want to get this good information out. So check out that last podcast so you can know why we're doing what we're doing and how this podcast is going to work. And then come back to this one, which is called New Year Same Me, so that we can talk about these resolutions. So let's get right into it. So when it comes to New Year's resolutions, a lot of times, a lot of people, hundreds of thousands, millions, I don't know, bunch of people will set a goal, a New Year's resolution, or a few of them. And by the time we get to the end of the year, we don't even know where them resolutions is. We don't even remember what we said, to be honest with you. I'm guilty. I've done it, which is why I try not to really set resolutions anymore. But a lot of people do it. And one of the main types of resolutions that we do is health, right? So health can look like a lot of things when it comes to resolutions. It may be to be more physically active that year. It may be to start a very specific diet. It may be to drink more water. It might be to stop drinking some other things. So health plays a big important role, and a lot of people try to lose weight, so that's also a very big goal with the New Year's resolution. So I want to give you some tips to help you just become a better, healthier you that kind of bypasses some of the pitfalls and the tropes that we fall into when it comes to New Year's resolutions. So the first one is going to be the fad diet. When we talk about fad diets, these are those diets that are super, super popular for whatever reason. You hear about them, they become a buzz, everybody's doing it, and they kind of circulate. So they might go away and come back and go away and come back. Right now, one of the biggest ones is the ketogenic diet. It's been really big for probably the last 7, 8 years, and now you're starting to kind of see a decline. But at its height, a lot of companies were buying in. They were putting keto on the name of stuff that had nothing to do with keto. It was very interesting, and people was buying it and loving it. And so with these fad diets, I want to talk about why people tend to try them, right? What makes them so appealing? I also want to talk about why they don't tend to last, because to be honest, they're called a fad because it's fleeting. It's something that comes into your life, you do it, and it goes away. So let's talk about the pros and cons of diets. So the first pro is typically, believe it or not, and I'm going to be honest with you because I'm the realest dietitian you'll ever meet. If you do the diet, it does work when it comes specifically to weight loss for the most part. Most of these fad diets, when you're trying to lose weight, if you follow the directions of the diet, you will lose weight. The second pro is it is the rules are already set. They're very strict, but for the rule follower, this could be a good thing because you don't have to do any extra work when it comes to deciding if I should have this or if I shouldn't. For example, the ketogenic diet, right? And I keep going back to it. I fell victim to it when it first started before. I became a dietitian. I tried it out, and believe it or not, I actually lost 30 pounds. So it did work, but I gained it all back. But I digress. It had its rules already set. So with the ketogenic diet, you know, you typically do high fat, moderate protein, low carb. You want your carbohydrates to be less than 20 net grams per day. That's really, really low. But we'll save that for the cons portion. And so, as long as you kind of follow those rules, I saw success with it. The third pro is the diets tend to foster more whole food eating in general. What I mean by this is with a lot of these diets, because you can't really go out to the restaurants and specifically order things from this diet. Now you can order certain things and put things together to kind of make sure that you are eating within the diet, but they don't tend to have keto recipes on the menu per se. Now some do, especially now it's become a bigger thing. But for the most part, a lot of that cooking is done at home. And because of how these diets are designed, you are typically eating more whole foods. Now, that again isn't always the case. There is a such thing as dirty keto, where you get to eat a lot of processed foods and things. And as long as you're sticking to those ratios that I talked about earlier, you can still lose weight. But for the most part, most of these diets, the carnivore diet, you are tending to eat more whole, real meat. Um, the ketogenic diet, again, you're eating more real meat, high fatty items, avocados, things like that. What's also interesting, just take a small little turn. I think it's interesting that when I counsel people about a regular diet and we talk about better things, things that they can do better, substitutions, things like that, they'll say, well, I don't really like that. I ain't never, I ain't been that kind of person. I don't eat that. I need my stuff to have flavor. But we'll do these crazy fad diets with stuff that we know is disgusting. And for the sake of what? Instead of just making healthier choices. But I guess that kind of goes into the cons. And when you think about, like, for example, the cabbage soup diet. Now, I'm sure there's somebody out there that's saying, well, you ain't tried my cabbage soup. Cool. I'm sure day one is delicious. It always is delicious day one, the cabbage soup, if you know how to cook. Day two, it's okay. By the time you get to day three, you can't tell me that you're not over that cabbage soup. Warming it up probably makes you sick. I digress. We're going into a tangent here. So, moving over to the cons. Because the rules are really set for a lot of these diets, we tend to cheat a lot. People will cheat day one. Keto diet. Oh, I'm doing the keto diet, but I'm going to just try a little bit of this cake. Oh, I'm doing the keto diet, but I'm going to just, that pasta look real good. Let me try. And that honestly becomes more dangerous than the actual diet sometimes. These diets are already kind of teeter tottering, if not all the way pushed over into the lane of dangerous, just by the nature of them. So when you're eating high fat, you tend to eat more saturated fat. If you already have issues with cholesterol or hypertension, things like that, these diets could really set you back, especially when we're talking about things like the ketogenic diet, carnivore diet, right? So they're already teeter tottering on unsafe. And specifically with the keto diet, you get this thing called the keto flu, where when your body is converting from using carbs as your main source of energy to using ketones. And so you get this thing that they call the keto flu, where you'll get the sweats, you'll feel feverish, you might have a resting headache, you'll feel nauseous, and what prolongs it is your body going in and out of using ketones and and the carbs for energy. And so when you had those little taste of cake or that little apple that you weren't supposed to have, your body is just going back and forth and back and forth. And guess what? It affects it a lot. And so you definitely want to be mindful of that. The other thing is, as I said earlier, it can just pose additional health risks. These diets aren't specifically catered to people with different issues when it comes to heart health and just heart health in general. My goodness. When we talk about a lot of these diets that are high in fat and things like that, they're not really the healthiest for us overall. Now, I'm sure you have your people that will tell you that they are. And if you want to listen to their podcast, be my guest. But my professional opinion, a lot of these diets, when it comes to high fat, high calorie diets, they're not going to be the most healthy for us. And I'm sure somebody's going to hear that and say, oh, yeah, just go eat more processed food. No, I want you to eat more whole foods, but eat a balanced diet of whole foods. That is everything on fad diet. So, what can you replace these things with? Well, if you're not going to do a fad diet, which I do not recommend, what I recommend is building healthy habits overall. And I want to give you three to start with. These are the three that I start with most people, because if we're being really, really honest with ourselves, these three things that I'm going to recommend, most of us don't do consistently. And so the first one is going to be drink more water. I was doing some research and I came across this article that basically said that it's estimated that 97% of Americans don't drink enough water throughout the day. That's a pretty high number. That's really high, actually. My goal, at least with this podcast, is to get more people drinking water. We got to get that number down, folks. I need y'all drinking some water. Ways that you can do that. The first thing is one of the easiest ways to kind of estimate how much water you should drink is just by trying to drink half your body weight in pounds of water in ounces. So if you weigh 150 pounds, half of 150 would be 75. And so you would want to drink 75 ounces per day. Now, the second thing that helps is tracking your water. So you can either do like an app. They have water tracking apps where you kind of put in how much water you're drinking. That can be a little tedious for me. They also have those bottles that um have the, drink this by noon and all that kind of stuff. That is too much anxiety for a lot of people. I find people that I work with, because what happens is, especially if you are working during the day or at night, whenever you're working, something can come up. You don't get your 11 o'clock water in, and then next thing you know, it's like 12 o'clock and you still got to drink the 10, the 11, and the 12. And it just becomes this thing where you're trying to catch up on water. What I recommend is what I call the dedicated water bottle method. And you find a water bottle that you really like. It could be one of them 40-ounce ones that everybody like, or it can be whatever. It could be just as long as it's reusable, and make sure you wash it regularly. Don't be dirty, don't be weird. But you want to take that water bottle, see how many ounces it is, divide it by the amount of ounces that you should be drinking in a day, and that'll give you how many of those cups you should drink in a day. So it becomes a lot easier, because when you have more time, you can drink a little more. And if you get busy, you don't have to worry about the idea that I got behind. Definitely try the dedicated water bottle method. Now, the second thing that I want you to do to build a healthier habit is we got to be more physically active in 2025. So, physical activity is moving your body. A lot of people put physical activity into two categories, which is either walking or going to the gym. Both of these are two good forms of physical activity. But I want you to know that if you're a person that gets a little overwhelmed with the idea of going to the gym, or you get gym fright or gym anxiety, or you just don't like walking is boring to you, whatever, as long as you are moving your body, you're getting your heart rate up above 120, and you don't have to be full-fledged sweating, but I do need some dewiness on the forehead. That is considered physical activity. Now, what we want to do is active physical activity, or dedicated physical activity, not passive physical activity. Passive physical activity is when people tell me, well, I park further to go to the grocery store. That's amazing. I'm glad that you're getting those extra steps in. But you got to go to the grocery store anyway. So take some time out of your day to be physically active. The CDC recommends 150 minutes of physical activity throughout the week, and that could be light to moderate intensity, or you can do 75 minutes of high intensity activity throughout the week, and that helps with your overall health. It helps to promote good cardiovascular health. It helps to manage blood sugar levels. It helps, believe it or not, being physically active helps to support good HDLs, which is our good cholesterol. So definitely work on being physically active. It also helps with your mood. When you're physically active, it helps typically with your mental health as well. The third thing is to focus on whole foods. Now, when we talk about whole foods, we are talking about the way that I describe it to people that I work with is when you think about whole foods, you want it to be as close as you can find it in nature. The closer it is that you can find it in nature, the more it is going to be considered a whole food. So, an example is an apple. An apple, yes, it is polished. Typically, when you find it in the store, unless it's organic, it might not be polished. But that apple, besides the polishing, is pretty much going to be how it looks when it's on the tree versus apple juice. I have never in my life seen an apple juice tree. If you've seen one, please take a picture, send it to me. Now, I've seen an apple tree, but never ever seen an apple juice tree. So you want it to be closer to how you find things in nature. Water. Haha. Water is something you find in nature, folks. Water with though I'm not gonna get on that tangent today. But anyway, other things. So fruits and vegetables, those are gonna be what we call whole foods. I rather you do, or I recommend fresh fruits and vegetables or frozen. You can do canned, but fresh and frozen are going to be the best version. If you're able to get is canned, I understand. Definitely still use those, but if you're able to purchase fresh and frozen, try to use those more often. Also think about whole foods when it comes to grains. So with grains, rice, preferably wild rice. I'll take brown rice, but wild rice is going to be your highest in fiber. Quinoa, farro. I'll even take whole grain pasta, whole wheat pasta, whole wheat bread. All of those things are going to be a little closer to how you find it in nature. Now, the reason why whole wheat bread is less processed than, let's say, a regular white bread is because the whole wheat has the whole grain, the whole wheat, the outside, which is what we call the bran included. So when you find wheat in nature, you don't find it with the bran stripped off, right? We take it off so that we can make that softer white bread. But whole wheat bread is going to be closer to how you find it in nature. Still processed, but more closely related to how you find it in nature. So once you start kind of making that differentiation, you can do the same thing with meat. You want to use cut meats like chicken breast, sirloin, fillets, chuck roast, versus like a bacon. Bacon, even though you can find pork belly in nature, bacon is something that's salted and cured, right? So it's a little further away than just like a standard chicken breast. Same thing with any of those deli items. When you think about sliced turkey, sliced chicken, it's not I'm not putting it in a good or bad category, but I will say it's more processed than just having chicken or turkey. So keep that all in mind. You want to make the effort to switch more to whole foods. And if you do those things, I promise you, you start off at the beginning of the year, you will see a big difference when it comes to your health overall. All right, so now we are back for Chef Boy RDN Tries It. This segment this week, we're going to talk about a whole food that I recently got into. A lot of people have been eating it, but I just now put it on my radar. And it's always kind of been around in my life. Like I've had them here and there, but I've never made them a part of my diet like they are now. And that is dates. Now, what are dates? Dates are, they're these big, almost like a cross between a raisin and a prune without the deepness of flavor of a prune or a raisin. That's the best way I can describe it. And they're kind of chewy. They have some fiber, typically 2 grams, 2 to 3 grams per serving. They're low lower calorie, lower sugar. So it's 80, around 80 calories per serving. And a serving typically is about an ounce of dates. Some are a little more, some are sweeter, some are more fibrous. It just kind of depends on the type of date. But overall, dates are a good source when you need something sweet. I literally just eat them whenever I want like a little sweet treat as is. I've also taken them, soaked them in hot water, blended them up, and made an apple dip out of them, and it was delicious. So definitely give dates a try, and more than dates, give whole foods a try. I would give dates honestly a solid 9 out of 10. They are good, they're versatile, they're easy. I don't have to really manipulate it too much if I don't want to. And if I want to, I totally can and turn it into something else. The other cool thing about dates is the flavor to me. It's very reminiscent of, it's not one for caramel, if you will, but it has that nice brown nutty note of like a good caramel. So I like that. And then if I'm really trying to get fancy and I'm trying to do like a salted caramel, might put a little fleur de sal on it and eat them like that. Really good. So definitely give dates a try. But more than dates, make a commitment to yourself to try these 3 tips, and starting with the whole foods. Get some whole foods in there. This episode is sponsored by the vitamin of the week. And the vitamin of the week this week is going to be B12. B12, the formal name of B12 is going to be cobalamin. And the reason why I chose B12 this week is because we know B12 for its energy giving properties. A lot of times, when people need some energy, they'd be like, oh, I need to take a B12, right? And it does help with energy. It supports, energy production by helping to metabolize or break down the fats and the proteins in our body. It also helps with DNA synthesis. It helps with red blood cell production and our nervous system. It helps to support our nerves and our brain. So B12 is very good for us. Now, B12 is not something that our body naturally makes. We have to get it from outside sources. And what actually makes B12, believe it or not, is bacteria. But the way we end up getting it in our system is they start out in bacteria. Something super, super small will eat that bacteria, and then something less small will eat that, and less small will eat that. And before you know it, works its way up the food chain. And by the time we get our meat, it has the B12 in it. And so, places that you can find it is going to be in meat, like liver. And I don't know if you remember last week, but last week I told you that liver is one of the most vitamin rich meats that you can get. And it is an organ meat, but it's going to be found in liver. It's also going to be found in fish and shellfish. It's going to be found in eggs, dairy, like milk and cheese, milk alternatives. So, the cool thing or the interesting thing, because it is so closely tied to meat, a lot of vegans and vegetarians can find themselves B12 deficient. In order to combat that, we fortify our milk alternatives with B12. So, you can get B12 in, soy milk, almond milk, things like that. And then the last thing, especially again for our vegans and vegetarians, you can get it from nutritional yeast. So if you're a person that uses nutritional yeast as kind of that umami or cheese replacement thing, that has B12 in it. What happens with deficiency, right? So typically with deficiency, it can actually start to affect your nerves. It can cause some numbing. And of course, as you know, in deficiency, it can cause a feeling of satiety, or feeling like you need some more energy. Now, with toxicity, this is a water soluble vitamin. So, we kind of talked about the difference between water soluble and fat soluble last week. And with water soluble vitamins, you basically excrete them out through your urine. So, it's very rare that you have a B12 toxicity, but if you take too much B12, your body just gets rid of what it it doesn't need. So don't waste your money trying to like, oh, I need a mega dose of B12. You're just basically making very expensive urine. Okay, so don't fall into that trope of just trying to increase the B12. And that is everything on B12. I am so glad that you spent today with me. I hope that you learn some things. I hope that you get away from those fad diets and you start building healthy habits, whether that habit is drinking more water, which you would do by maybe looking at drinking about half your body weight in ounces of water. Also, it could look like getting that dedicated water bottle and getting that started. I also, hope that you start some physical activity. And again, it doesn't have to be going to the gym or walking. Just got to get their heart rate up. And I don't have to see sweat beads, but I do need to see some moisture on the forehead, people. We got to get some, an increased work of breathing. You don't have to be falling out. We don't want that. But that heart rate should be going up. And then the third thing is make a commitment to get more whole foods in your diet. Try to eat at least a cup to a cup. No, really, let's scratch that. Try to eat a cup and a half to 2 cups of vegetables every single day. And a lot of people might say that's easy, but when we start looking over our diets, you would be surprised how little vegetables some people just have in their day. Also, increase the variety in vegetables. Try something new. If you ain't like it growing up, then maybe roast it. Maybe throw it in the air fryer. Give Brussels sprouts another try. Give asparagus another try. Artichokes. Whatever it is, just try to increase those whole foods. Next week, we are going to be talking more about that water. I get to go on my rant. I'm very excited to do it. And I hope you come back next week with your dedicated water bottle right here on the Chef Boy RDN podcast. Y'all have a good day.